Don't let him do it, Sean. Get out your taser.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus.
Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalists podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists.
Welcome to episode number 51. Today we're going to talk about moving. We got some questions to answer, Ryan. Now, you and I have accidentally become experts in moving over the last 6 years. We have moved quite a bit.
Yes.
In fact, although we even moved a lot while we were in the corporate world, not a lot, but we used to have this inside joke that, and this just popped into my head a second ago, but I would call Ryan up, and I would call you up, and I would say, hey, man, you ready for Josh and Ryan Move Heavy Things season number 4?
Yes.
And then it'd be season number 5. There was always something I was trying to get you to move in the most obscure place.
If it wasn't like a dining table, then it was like your father's chest. Remember that chest we had to move?
It was
up,
me,
like,
you, and Jerome.
Like
Now,
2 flights of stairs.
My brother Jerome is one of the strongest people I know. He's actually done. He has done moving for a living before, and he was. You and him and me were trying to get this up this weird flight of stairs into the third bedroom, which was my office. At my
Which hardly fit in there. Like,
yeah,
like with your desk. And, yeah,
it was absurd.
And the bookshelves. Yeah,
it was so absurd.
It was crazy.
And I can look back at it now and realize how absurd it was. All this and the pain of moving all of these things. And I
have to say, like, moving is probably like it's in my top 3 worst hated activities.
The irony of this is right after we record this podcast, we're moving some stuff today. We have
we aren't.
Right. We hired a couple guys to come move a conference table for us, and a couple chairs, because we're moving into some new office space eventually here.
Now we're a bit older, man. We got to save our backs.
Oh my! Well, you know.
And
my
at
back.
the end of the day, it's funny, man. Like, I've told people before, like, oh yeah, I'm moving this weekend or whatever. Yada yada yada. Oh yeah, do you need some help? No, I got movers. You got movers? Isn't that going to cost you like $1,000? It's like, no, it might cost me $150.
Right.
Because I hardly have anything, and it takes them like an hour and a half to move me.
Yeah.
And if I was to move myself, it'd take me twice as long.
Uh-huh.
And my back would be taxed for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, not good, man.
Yeah, man.
So as we've gone through this process, we've accidentally learned a lot. 4 years ago, we moved out to Montana. Now, you and I moved to this cabin in the middle of nowhere, and literally everything that I owned, I was able to fit into my car. I got rid of some furniture, and we moved into a cabin that was, I'll say, furnished, but there was like a table and a couch. And a
coffee table.
A couple beds.
Yeah.
Which people can see. So if you want to see what that looked like,
right.
we moved into this cabin in the middle of nowhere at theminimalists.com/cabin. That's where we wrote our second book. It's called Everything That Remains. We moved out here for 4 months just to try to write that book, the first draft of that book. And oh man, we got out here. It was October 3rd when I got out about a week before you did, and it was already snowing, like snowing heavily the day that I got out to Montana, and it was a few hours away from Missoula. It was by a town called Phillipsburg, 1 traffic light and 3,400 square miles, middle of nowhere. So we moved out there, and it was just blistering cold all the time. And it was a very productive thing. But then we decided, I don't want to live in the middle of nowhere forever, right? And so we found ourselves gravitating toward the big city, Missoula, Montana. Moved out here with our friend Colin Wright, who runs a website called Exile Lifestyle. And we started a publishing company together, and we all 3 moved into the same house, and didn't own very much then. And moving was a lot easier. It's still a pain in the butt, no matter what, because it's just you have things that you have to deal with. You're forced to confront your clutter or your accumulations, even if you don't have that many accumulations. But then a year later, Ryan, you and I went on tour, and we were on tour for almost a year. We donated 10 months of our lives to do 119 free events in 8 different countries. And when we were on that tour, we each had one bag. Now, a lot of people have asked me about that bag it's come back to haunt me.
What a bad job we did in that movie.
I know,
someone
right?
wants to purchase something after they watch it.
Yeah, so in our documentary, it outlines some of that tour that we were on. That's a through thread throughout the documentary. And I had one bag for the entire 10 months, and you had a bag for the entire 10 months. And you really learn that, man, when you get back to whatever home is, you start to question, like, okay, do I really, why was I holding on to that? I don't even remember owning that jacket.
Yeah.
And so minimalism for me is about constant questioning. And in a weird way, Ryan, I feel like we temporarily deprived ourselves of things while we were on the road. And coming back, you realize, okay, I didn't really get much from that. Or, man, I really missed having a couch.
Right.
And so there are things that you realize while you're on the road, because we stayed at a lot of Airbnbs or at readers' houses. And, wow, this does add value to my life. And these other things I thought did, when I went without them for a while, I realized that they didn't. So we've moved a lot in the last 6 years, last 10 years, last 15 years. And so we have some experience with that, and we want to answer your questions today. So I think we should just go ahead and dive right in.
Let's do it.
Our first voicemail question is from Preston. He is in one of my favorite cities in the world, Fargo, North Dakota. We have a lot of friends out there. And
Is it like Dayton, Ohio's number 1, Fargo, North Dakota's number 2?
No. I think so. I think my favorite city is probably Los Angeles or Dayton. Dayton's always feel like home to me. Los Angeles, just because there's so much access to everything, and there's some really great people there and some cool communities there.
It's funny.
And the weather is awesome.
Yeah, we got some speaking gigs coming up in LA in June, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because people get a hold of me, and I keep telling people like, oh yeah, I'll be out there in June. And then I'm realizing to myself, like, wait a minute. I've contacted probably like 5 or 6 really cool people in LA. I've got to be there for more than 2 days because there's no way I'm going to be able to hang out with all of them and spend time with them.
That's cool with me. I'll spend a month out there with you. We can hang out, and there are just so many people there. But there's access to a lot of stuff too, and there's access to nice weather. And so people often say LA is not very walkable. I say anything that's 70 degrees all the time is walkable, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
But I've been surprised by a lot of other cities too when we were on tour. San Antonio was great. Salt Lake City I absolutely love. St. Petersburg is one of my favorite cities in Florida. Man, what else? San Francisco is obviously a great city.
Yeah.
Halifax, Canada. There are random places like that. You're like, I didn't know this would be so cool.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool place.
So we have a question from Fargo, North Dakota. Preston wants to ask us something.
Right now, I live in a very small efficiency apartment, and I'm extremely happy in the small space. But in a few short months, I'll be getting married and moving into a 2-bedroom house with my fiance. And to be honest, I'm a little worried that all of the extra space will make our new home feel empty and a bit unwelcoming. I'm wondering about how we can prepare. What I'm wondering is how we can prepare for the move and what opportunities moving might bring to continue focusing on what really matters. Of course, in addition to my lovely new bride.
Preston, what good foresight there, man. Planning ahead. Most of my relationships, when I've moved in with the significant other, usually don't plan this far ahead. And then there's problems that happen as
because you didn't talk about essential
right as the situation develops. Yes. No, I would say definitely talk with your partner about it. Preston, you and your partner need to decide the life you want to live. You got to ask yourself questions like, how many guests are we planning on having over at certain times? If you've got a big family and you're going to have a lot of people over, plan around that. Like me, I know that I'm going to have people coming through. Even though I lived in a loft apartment right now, I have literally had, at most, I've had 5 people staying in addition to Mariah and I.
Uh-huh.
So 7 total people in this loft apartment.
Right.
So I mean, I can still accommodate them, and I have enough dishes for them.
Uh-huh.
And Mariah and I plan accordingly for that. Josh, when's the last time you had 5 visitors at your place?
Well, we had Bex's mom and dad 2 nights ago. And so we plan for that. We have air mattress kind of thing,
Sure.
and that's it. But for me, I don't really care to have guests over that often.
Right. So, so that's why it's important to ask those questions. 'Cause,
Yeah.
You and I are gonna have different answers. Maybe you and your partner will have a different answer. But asking these questions ahead of time will certainly help you plan better. Ask yourself other questions like, what meals are we planning on cooking on a regular basis? What are we going to be doing with our spare times? Questions like this is what is really going to help you decide what is necessary. But yes, the most important part of this is to decide together what the rules and what the expectations of the house will be. And there isn't a right or wrong answer. I think the only way that it's wrong is if you're not considering each other's opinions and consideration.
Yeah, and then what's right today will certainly change in time. If you decide to have kids, or if you decide to take on a new career, you may want to move somewhere else. It's really important to continue talking about that. And those conversations are difficult. Becca and I have these difficult conversations all the time, and we'll just sit down now. I'll just say, hey, let's have a difficult conversation. Because we know that we're open to change all the time, and we need to be cognizant of our shared circumstances, but also what the needs and desires of the other person are as well. It's interesting, as you were saying that, Ryan, I was thinking about Frank from our documentary.
Oh, yeah.
The minimalist architect.
What a cool dude.
By the way, if people want to see Ryan's loft, you just go to theminimalists.com/Nicodemus, and you can take a tour. You won't see 5 people sleeping on the floor in those pictures, but you can get an idea of that space. And you can find my space as well over at theminimalists.com/Milburn. But I was thinking of Frank in the documentary, Ryan, and he used this word, and you were talking about with Preston about asking these questions, but Frank kept using this word. I don't think he even knew he was using it, but that word was appropriate. And so maybe what you need to ask yourself is, what's appropriate for me? And keep it in mind that as you start to combine a space together, what's going to be appropriate for the two of you is going to be different. So what's appropriate for us? And answering that question together is going to be really important. Another thing that Frank said, Ryan, that really stood out to me when we were talking to him sort of behind the scenes, he said when he builds a house for someone, when he designs a house for someone, he doesn't ask them, do you want a living room, or do you want a dining room, or do you want a 3rd bedroom, or do you want a 3-car garage? Because most people are going to say yes to those things.
Right.
Because those are cultural assumptions.
A 3rd bedroom, yeah, that sounds great.
Right.
Can you work that in the plan?
As opposed to realizing, well, that 3rd bedroom means more costs, or I'm forsaking space that I might actually use somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And so he says, I don't build a house around their life. I'm sorry. I build a house around their life. I don't try to cram a life into the house.
Right.
And I think that's too often what we're doing now is we find a house, I think that'll work, and then we try to cram a life into it. And Preston said a few things to me that are red flags whenever I think of those. Yeah, the extra space thing really stood out to me when Preston talked about having this extra space. It's okay. Emptiness isn't necessarily extra space, and I think we need to become more comfortable with having some extra space there, or having some emptiness, and not thinking of it as extra space, just thinking of it as empty space. And I thought about some people who inspired me early on when we were going down this journey, and one of the guys who's also in the documentary is Leo Babauta, who has 6 kids, and his wife Eva, and so the 8 of them, and the kids are everywhere from college to elementary when I first started reading his website, which is called Zen Habits. And I found an essay from a while ago that I thought would be applicable for Preston's situation here. This one is called The Empty Container. Our lives get so complicated, not overnight, but gradually. The complication creeps up on us, one significant step at a time. Today I order something online. Tomorrow someone gives me a gift. Then I get a free giveaway. Then I decide I need some new tools. One item at a time, the clutter accumulates because I'm not constantly purging the old. Today I say yes to an email request. Tomorrow, I say yes to a party invitation. Then, I get asked to a quick cup of coffee. Then I decide to be part of a project, one yes at a time, and soon my life is full, and I don't know how I got so busy. I look at a news site, then a social media site, then my email, then read an interesting article, then watch an online video someone sent me, and soon my day is gone and I didn't get much done, and my life gets eaten away by minuscule bites. How do we protect against this feature creep, this complication creep? We have to take a step back regularly. Instead of thinking, how can I get rid of this complicated mess? Let's ask, what if I started with a blank slate? If it were an empty container with limited space, what would you put in it? For me, I might put some playtime and reading time with my kids, coffee time and exercise time with my wife, some long walks and talks with good friends and close relatives, work that matters to me and that helps others, continual learning, and time alone to meditate and spend with my thoughts and a good book. Those are the things I'd put into my empty container because they feel right to me. What would you choose? Once we figured that out, we know what belongs in the container. Now we just need to constantly look at things and activities and requests and tasks and ask, is this one of my container items? Ryan, I thought that was powerful because he's basically moving into an empty container, right? And you get to decide what to fill it with. And just because you have something to put somewhere doesn't mean that is the appropriate item to put in that space. And so don't feel compelled to fill a space just because you have an extra room or a basement or entertainment room or
oh man, there's a perfect spot for a TV right there. We should probably get a big TV.
Right,
yeah,
right.
That's exactly how I used to approach things.
Right, because it was there,
right.
you felt like it was empty. Empty. Let's flip it around. Full means clutter. If you fill the space, maybe you're just cluttering the space, and if you empty the space, you're freeing yourself of that obligation. Yeah. And so, Preston, I would love to send you a copy of our documentary. It's on Netflix if you haven't seen it already, and a bunch of other platforms. But we can send you the Vimeo copy. So there's an online version on Vimeo that has 6 hours of bonus content. So you can dive a little bit deeper into some of your favorite interviews. Or Sean, if he wants the DVD, if you reach out to him, he wants a DVD, you can send that to him as well. If we do send you the DVD, Preston, please make sure you minimize it afterward. You can give it to a friend or family member, someone else who will get value from it, or donate it to your local library so someone else can check it out and get that value from it as well. All right, let's move on, Ryan. Our next question is from Bernie in Toronto,
Bernie
Canada.
called in?
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing in Canada. But yeah, Bernie in Toronto. What's your question?
I am in the middle of a very, very challenging separation. Looks like we are finally at a stage where there's a settlement coming forward soon. I'm living in the house, matrimonial home, and I have 2 wonderful children. And as we are probably getting to a stage where it's time to eliminate and minimize and plan for our new space together, how can I help my kids to minimalize and at the same time make it fun and make it a positive experience as to a horribly negative one? I think I've done a pretty good job so far of keeping the issues at hand away from them. And now that we are at the stretch run, I want to make sure that this is not a horrible experience as they are going to be forced really to give up stuff. But I also want that to be our way of life going forward, that the things in our life matter, the people in our life matter, and the things we do matter. So my son is 11, my daughter is 9, and I'm really looking forward to hear what you have to say about this.
First off, congratulations on your separation. I know that sounds weird to hear. It's a weird thing to say, but really what I mean by that is congratulations on moving in a new direction and trying to do so in a very positive way and influencing your kids positively through this as well. It can be very tricky and messy going through a divorce or a separation or a breakup, and especially tricky if you have other dependents, people who rely on you to remain upbeat. You know, their mood is going to be dictated often by your mood, and they're going to be watching. And so you want to be a positive influence for them, clearly, and you're asking the right questions here. So bravo, Bernie. A few things here that came to my mind. First off, when you talked about how do I help them move forward. Well, I think the first thing you want to do is don't just focus on the decluttering. Kids don't find any value in getting rid of their stuff usually. They're going to find value in what you are bringing into their new life or their new home or their new space, their new bedroom. And quite often that is built around experiences. And so when I think of Ella's room at our house, she has a guitar, which we got her for Christmas. She has a bed. She has a rug. It's like one of her favorite toys. Is just her rug because she can roll around on it, which is silly. And speaking of toys, so here are a couple stats for you on toys when you're thinking about kids and what they play with and what they need and what they use and what they want. A big difference between what they want and what they need, obviously. So there's some research that shows that your average 10-year-old, so about your kid's age there, Bernie, owns 238 toys. This is in England, actually. So it's probably much more in the United States.
Wow.
So 238 toys. But here's the thing. They play with only 12 toys daily. So that is what, 5% of their toys they play with on a daily basis. Now, we had a reader call into the podcast a while ago and left a tip. She talked about having she has 7 different bins for her kids, a Monday bin, a Tuesday bin, a Wednesday bin, so forth. And the kids play with the Monday bin on Mondays, right? And then they have to put everything back at the end of the day. And it keeps everything so clutter-free, but allows them to have this variety. So you could have 7 different bins with 12 different toys in each, or whatever the appropriate number is for you. I'm not prescribing a particular number, and that could be a great way to create a space that they use and have some meaningful experiences with them. Here's another stat that was staggering to me, Ryan. 3.1% of the world's children live in the United States. So only about 3% of the children in the world live in the United States, but they own 40% of the toys consumed globally.
My goodness.
So
and we wonder
3% of the kids, almost half of the toys in the world.
Wow, that is like total alignment with the stat of if everyone in the world consumed like the United States, we would need over 4 Earths to maintain our unchecked consumption, and we start them when they're young.
Right. And it's even worse when they're young. These greedy kids have 40% of the toys. And I think it's all the kids' fault. No, of course it's not. No. I mean, who's buying? These kids can't go get toys on their own. Every time Ella asks me for something, I say, who's going to pay for it? How are you going to afford that? Like I start asking questions that at least I try to get her to think down that path of more intentional consumption. And of course, I'm not going to get the most profound answer from her at age 3, but by planting the seed early and frequently, I think it'll sprout into an intentionality that lasts a lifetime, hopefully. And so those are some things that I would think about. Also, going back to Leo from our documentary and from zenhabits.net, he has another essay. We'll put links to all of these in the show notes. By the way, if you want the show notes in your email inbox, you can just sign up for our email newsletter at theminimalists.com. Just enter your email address at the top there, and we will make sure that these show notes show up in your inbox whenever we put out a new episode. But this Leo wrote a long essay. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he wrote an essay called A Guide to Creating a Minimalist Home. And I think that's the perfect a perfect article for moving. Moving is the time you're creating a new space, a new home for you or your family. And he talks about some of the benefits of having a minimalist home, being less stressful. The home itself is more aesthetically pleasing or appealing, and it's much easier to clean, right? And then he talks about what does a minimalist home look like? And he goes through some things here that I'll read real quick. First thing he says is, this would vary, of course, depending on your taste and how extreme of a minimalist you want to be. I am a minimalist, but not to any extreme, is what he says. But here are some characteristics of a minimalist home. So these are just broad characteristics. It's not a prescription. Number 1, minimalist furniture. A minimalist room would only contain a few essential pieces of furniture. A living room, for example, might have only a couch, another chair or a love seat, a coffee table, a minimalist entertainment stand, not a huge one with a bunch of shelves, a television maybe, and a couple lamps. It could even contain less: couch, chairs, and a coffee table, for example. Yeah, if you go take a look at my home, you'll see it's pretty minimal. We have a sofa and a chair. Could we have fewer items? Yeah, absolutely. But we're not ascetics. We're not monks. I don't want to own nothing at all. I don't want the space to be completely empty, but I have the things that are appropriate for our space. Next thing he talks about, number 2, clear surfaces. This was something that, so in our documentary, Graham Hill, we were talking to him about this, and one of the things that really stood out to me, he says he likes to have as few flat surfaces in a house as possible, because those are magnets for clutter. We just feel like we have to there's a flat surface, we have to set something down on top of it in the home. And so having fewer flat surfaces, fewer things where you can basically accumulate junk, right? So having clear surfaces. In a minimalist home, flat surfaces are clear except for 1 or 2 decorations. Which he says, see the next item. There are not a whole bunch of knickknacks and definitely not stacks of books or papers or other items. Number 3, he said, decorations. A home completely clear of things would be a bit boring, actually. So instead of having a coffee table completely free of any objects, you could have a simple vase with a few flowers, for example. Or a clear desk might have a family photo. An otherwise empty wall might have a tasteful piece of art. So filling the space with items that are not just appropriate for you, but pleasant for you. What brings you joy, but also not feeling obligated to fill the space, I think is important. What you talked about earlier, there's a good space for a TV. I am obligated to put a TV there.
Like, I literally can remember when I bought a 60-inch TV because there was a nice empty space above the fireplace.
and you feel like you had to do it. I remember that. That's when you were living in Springboro, right?
Yeah. I was like, man, this is a perfect spot for a TV. I've never had a big TV before. I'll go do that.
Yeah,
it was.
In the world we were in, it was go big or go home, right? And so I actually wrote something a little bit about this in my most recent house tour at the minimalists.com/Milburn. If you're going through this tour, you might say, "Where's the artwork?" And what I wrote is, it's all around us in the architecture, the plants, the furniture, the books, the music in the air. No, I'm not opposed to paintings on my wall, but I also don't feel obligated to hang a frame on drywall to feel complete. I am complete, as are you, even in an empty room. The stuff, then, only augments that which is already whole. Besides, there is a functionally infinite amount of art at the museums I frequent. And we talked about that on the last episode, Ryan. You talked about let the curators curate. Curator's going to curate.
Yeah.
And letting other people curate. And then don't feel obligated, but have stuff because you feel that it is necessary for your space. Now, necessary doesn't mean that it is just a tool. Tools can be great, but it can also mean that it just amplifies your experience. It makes it a more significant experience. And so if you want artwork all over your walls because that really brings you joy, great. But don't feel like it's necessary just because someone else tells you it is.
Dude, that was the biggest criticism of my which is funny because like we get criticism all the time, but on the house tour, like I got a lot of criticism of. Well, I just saw people post on Facebook, not like anyone messaged me directly, but oh my goodness, like those walls are so blank. I could never live in a home with no art. The funny thing is first off, I do have art, and there actually is like you can see one of the things hanging on the wall.
You have much more art than I do.
Yeah, but the pictures that I took, like the art is like just out of the frame. But anyway. Just to your point of just because a painting doesn't add value to your life, it may add value to my life,
right?
But I think where we get caught up in cluttering our homes is going back to that obligation of there's an empty space, well maybe we should put a big painting there, and yeah, you're right. Like we don't necessarily have to do that. I really like Bernie's question here about the kids because he asked like how do I make this fun for my kids? And the first thing I thought of was, Bernie, your kids, I promise you, they love to contribute. Whether or not they know it or not, your kids will totally get on board with contribution.
Basic human need.
Yeah, so how do you make it fun? Take them to a soup kitchen or go to a food bank. Kids love to help. They love to see, I promise you take them to a soup kitchen, they would love to see the smiling faces of the homeless folks going through the line, getting free food, getting a meal. They're going to feel really good about that. In addition to that, you can ask them if they'd be willing to give up some of their things to people who are less fortunate. I know a lot of parents who have done that with their kids, and the kids jump on it. They may not, be willing to fill a 50-gallon garbage bag full of toys, although I have seen that happen. But certainly the kid will at least say, yes, let me think of one or two things that I can donate and give to some kids that are less fortunate. So yes, help them see the joy in giving. And, if you have to make this extreme change, Bernie, like if this is happening next week, changing their attitudes is, I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be easy. Like you can't, if you've been raising them a certain way for, 9 years and 11 years, you're not going to be able to just turn their attitude around in a week. But what you can do is be honest with them. And you can explain to your children why the circumstances are changing and why the space is getting smaller and how this is going to not just benefit you, but benefit them and the entire family. And ask for their support. Ask them to help you through this tough time. Kids, I don't think we give them enough credit for, wanting to help us out or to support the family. Because, you think of a 9-year-old, you're like, oh, well, they're just worried about video games and whatever else. Sure. But if you talk to a kid like an adult, I think you'd be surprised on the reaction that you get from them. So talk to your kids about what changes need to be made. And ask if they're willing to get involved and help you support them. And then, at the end of the day, Bernie, they're looking at you. They are looking to you as a role model. So by far, you've got to set the example. You've got to show them, hey, this is what Dad has given up. This is what I am planning to do moving forward, and I really need your help to help me do this. So living by example is definitely going to by far be the best way to get to curb your children's habits. But going back to that contribution thing, certainly that will help them see the joy in kind of giving up things as well.
I think that what's nice about that, Ryan, is it also helps them with perspective, gives them that other view into a different world, because like you said, going to a soup kitchen or a food bank, you're going to deal with people that are maybe outside of the kids' comfort zone. But
outside of the bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting them outside of the bubble, giving them a new perspective. And to just agree with what you just said about they're watching you, meaning they're also watching your excitement. So when we moved to the home that we're in now, Bex was super excited about going to this place, and Ella saw that excitement. And so she was so excited about moving into this new space, even though it's not an appreciably different experience from what she had before. It's not a crazy different home, and so it's not like she's moving into some mansion with marble floors or something. No, it's a very basic home, but she saw her mother's excitement, and so she mimicked that. And if her mom was stressed out about moving, she would have been stressed out too. Yeah. She may have not had the vocabulary to say I'm stressed out, but you would have seen it in her physiology. The last thing that I see here that I wanted to share that this made me think of, our friend Joshua Becker, who's also in our documentary, he and his wife Kim have 2 kids and live in the suburbs. And he wrote a book called Clutter Free with Kids, but he has an essay on his website, which we'll put a link to in our show notes. It's called How to Become a Minimalist with Children. And I'm just going to read some highlights here because this is pretty long, but I just want to go through the highlights and we'll let you take a look at the whole essay via our show notes. He says, the minimalist life holds benefits for all. Numbers of parents think a minimalist lifestyle is simply out of reach because they have children, as if the two are somehow incompatible. But that is not the case. As I explained in my book, Clutter Free with Kids, the principles of minimalism are completely within reach no matter how many children you have or where you live. And not only is minimalism completely possible with children, it is a lifestyle filled with benefits for your children. Since becoming a minimalist, I have been continually amazed at some of the lessons my 2 young children have learned. Over the past years, they have learned, I'm not going to read all these lessons, but I'll read the highlights here. Number 1, that we don't need to buy things to be happy. And then he goes out and expands on what he means by that. Number 2, that we don't need to live life like everyone else. Number 3, that we live within our means. Number 4, that we think carefully about our purchases. Number 5, that we gladly share. So what you were just talking about, Ryan. We gladly share with others. What I would say is give. We're giving. The next point is that clutter is a drag. If you can help your kids understand that. Ella was this week, I think I tweeted this from her @EllaSandwich Twitter account. She was trying to donate her pills or her vitamins. She has the vitamins that we give her at night. I don't want it. I want to donate these vitamins. And so, we take it a bit. She understands.
I love how she uses the donation as leverage to do things she doesn't want to do.
Totally. She wants to donate the kale on her plate.
Right.
So learning that clutter is a drag. Next point is that we love spending time with our kids. So by getting the clutter out of the way, you make time for the people around you. And the last point here is that we are in control of our stuff. That's one of the biggest benefits for anyone, no matter where you are in the socioeconomic ladder, is you're regaining control of your life because you're no longer letting the stuff control you. And he goes on to say, minimalism with children is entirely possible. However, it does require a little more effort, a little more thoughtfulness, and a lot more patience. As you embark or continue on the journey, here are some practical steps to consider. Number 1, explain your decision. And he goes into detail on that. Number 2, begin minimizing your possessions first. Your possessions first, right? Number 3, remove the items they do not use first. So the items that they just haven't used, you basically don't want to go into the room and say, oh, you're playing that guitar, give it to me. We're getting rid of it. We're donating it.
If you got a tricycle sitting in the shed that hasn't been used in 2 years, you could probably go ahead and get rid of that.
Yes, exactly. Number 4, focus on the positive. So we talked about that earlier. If you're excited, they're going to be excited. Number 5, treat them to fun experiences. Okay, so owning experiences instead of owning the stuff, right? Number 6, choose your purchases carefully going forward and teach that to them as well. When you're bringing something new into your life, so when you're letting go of something, what do you ask? Does this add value to my life? When you're bringing something new into your life, or to your family's life, is this going to add value to our lives? And ask your kids that as well. Number 7, teach them about gift giving. A few things I would encourage you to go back and listen to here is we have an entire podcast on gift giving that Ryan and I recorded a couple months ago. You can go back into our podcast feed at theminimalists.com/podcast and check out the gift giving episode. Also, way back was episode number 3. We did an entire podcast on children. And then I did a podcast episode, number 45, on parenting. So I think there's some additional advice you'll find some value in there. And the last thing, last tip he has here is be patient. Be patient with your family. Offer them plenty of time to adjust to minimalism rather than being pushed into it. Minimalism is a lifestyle that needs to be believed in and adopted. Show them plenty of patience. And after all, if it took you 30 years to adopt the minimalist lifestyle, it would be foolish to assume they will adopt it in 30 minutes or even 30 days.
Do you remember the guy who brought his daughter in Atlanta back in 2014, and he was like, I'm here for you to talk my daughter in and to help her or talk her into and help her understand why I went ahead and threw away all her stuff when she was like gone at school or something. And I was I don't think we're going to be able to convince your daughter why that was the right decision, because that's probably the worst way to get someone to agree to be a minimalist or to downsize, is to just throw away their stuff. In fact,
it's like a weird passive-aggressive confrontation.
Yeah, like it could be even worse. And I'm not knocking this guy. Like, he seemed like a very good father. Like, I mean,
good intentions.
Yeah, absolutely, good intentions. So I don't if he's listening to this, like I think you had the best intentions and your heart was into it. But yeah, I certainly would not recommend that strategy.
How about this? The road to discontent is cluttered with good intentions.
That's genius.
Yeah, write that down, Sean.
Yep.
That should be one of our minimal maxims for later, right?
We'll tweet that later.
So I think that essay will help you out. But then also, Bernie, I know you're going through a difficult time. It's a difficult transition, the separation. That's why I said congratulations. I want to reframe this for you. Ryan and I have both been through divorces in our life, and we made it to the other side better. In fact, I have a great relationship with my former spouse now. I just saw her last month. I was back in Dayton, Ohio, and we met up, and she has 2 little twins now, and her new husband have 4 kids. 2 are his from a previous marriage, and they have 2 together, and we get along really well. And I didn't know that was always going to be the case. And they say time heals all wounds, and that may or may not be true, but we made it out to the other side better people because of it, and our relationship is actually better than what it was when we were married. And so Ryan and I wrote a book back in 2012, and it came out in 2014. We spent a couple years writing. It was about this 5-year journey of our lives, this huge transition we made. We were in the corporate world, and then my mother died. My marriage ended both in the same month, and this tailspin forced me to a new but better lifestyle. And that book's called Everything That Remains. It's a memoir, and it's my favorite thing that we've ever created. And I'd love to send you a copy of that, Bernie, either the print book or the ebook of that, or if you wait a little bit, we have a new audiobook version from the very talented Justin Malik is recording that. It's we did it in a very interesting way. It's 216 pages, so about 200 pages, let's say, and it's written from my point of view. But throughout the book, there are 100 interruptions from Ryan. So you'll see that he's constantly interjecting and giving his perspective, his point of view. And I just really enjoyed creating that. And I think a lot of people have found value in that. And I hope you do too, Bernie. Our next question is from Deaton, also in Toronto, Canada.
I'm moving to the west coast of Canada, to Little Victoria Island, Vancouver Island, on the edge of the Pacific. I'm going back to school. My question is, how can I do this move in a way where I'm not taking too much stuff, but also not leaving a lot of stuff behind. I don't want to go there and end up not having things that I need, and I also don't want to get rid of a bunch of stuff that I may want, like my record collection, all my books. So yeah, how can I do this move? Taking enough stuff that I need.
This is the perfect time to be asking these questions. You are going to be in a really good spot. I can tell you, Ryan, when we are out on the road, and so many people come up to us. They're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they'll look back and say, you know what the best time of my life was? When I was driving off to a faraway college, and everything I owned fit into the vehicle I was driving. Those were the best times of my life. And I look at it and I said, well, you can get back to that. There's nothing stopping you from getting back to that other than making the decision to let go of that stuff. So you're actually at a really great time here. You're traveling from the east coast of Canada, well, almost east coast, the Midwest, Toronto, all the way over to Vancouver Island, over in Victoria, which is a beautiful city, by the way. And you get to make this journey. I think it's down Highway 1. You'll be driving through.
It's one of the best drives, though, man.
It's really
during the summer. It's one of the best drives.
Yeah, if you're going there in the winter, it's a bit more difficult. Driving through Manitoba and Saskatchewan midwinter, man, those people in those provinces, they're brave. They brave some cold winters. They make Montana look like Florida. And anyway, so you're going to be driving west. And this is the opportunity to reframe this as the best time of your life, because everything that you're going to bring with you is going to fit into your car. And so you need to ask yourself, because you're trying to figure out, what do I need? Ask yourself that. What do I need? And Deaton, I'm going to send you a copy of our book, Essential. It's an essay collection with 150 essays. And one of the essays in there's a whole chapter in there about stuff, by the way. And I think that's the chapter that's going to resonate most with you. But one of the essays in there is called Need, Want, Like. And it's basically taking any possessions that you own and putting them into one of three categories. I'm going to read a quick excerpt from that really quick. Maybe you're dying to do something different with your life. Maybe you want to discover your mission, change careers, or take a midlife sabbatical. But it doesn't seem sensible to make a big change, to do something different, does it? You're tired of your soul-crushing job, fettered to an income you've become accustomed to. It has a stranglehold on your life. But you can break free of the shackles of unnecessary obligation and its laundry list of side effects: stress, debt, discontent, anxiety, depression. The two of us took back control of our lives with a simple 3-category list. You can do likewise. First, write down all your expenses, every last dollar you spend: mortgage, car payment, rent, credit card statements, meals, gasoline, electricity, student loans, bottled water, trips to Starbucks, retirement, healthcare, savings, etc. Write it all down, all of it. Now, separate those expenses into 3 categories. And I'm going to want you to do the same thing here with your stuff, right? Because those are also expenses. They're monetary expenses, but they also take up a lot of time and attention, and cleaning and maintenance, etc. So category 1, these are your needs. What do you really, truly need to live? Everyone is different, but most of us have the same basic needs. What do you need? Food, shelter, Super Nintendo? Be honest with yourself, by the way. Category 2 is the wants category. This category is important. Many of the things you want can lead to meaning or happiness. The problem is that we indulge in too many of our wants. New vehicles, designer clothes, and impulse buys, many of which end up being likes instead of wants. Another way to look at this category is by asking yourself that famous question of ours, what adds value to your life? Those are your wants. So you don't necessarily need them, but you're going to want them, right? I've got this nice water bottle that in front of me here that I use every single day, and it does certainly add value to my life. Do I absolutely need this thing? Not necessarily. If I couldn't afford it, but it definitely adds value to my life. And so this is a want for me, right? And so category 3 is your likes category. This category is for when you say things like, yeah, I like my satellite radio, but I don't get a ton of value from it. Or, I like that dress. It's so my style, but I don't really need any new clothes. Many of the things we just sort of like suck up a ton of our income, and it's hard to notice during our consumer-driven frenzies. These likes are often impulse purchases that feel great in the moment, but the post-purchase high wears off by the time the credit card statement enters your mailbox. It's an odd double bind. It turns out that you don't really like many of your likes at all. You've made your list. You've got your 3 categories, and now it's time to take action. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up. This is what we did before we were ready to make any big life changes. So month 1, here's what Ryan and I did, and you're going to have to do these quickly if you're moving. But I got rid of 100% of my likes. 100% of my likes. Very difficult, but all of them were gone. Month 2, this one's the most difficult, by the way. I got rid of 100% of my wants. This is because I was trying to get out of debt. And for me, getting rid of my wants at first, it was difficult. So I'm going to read this to you real quick. Yes, I got rid of all of them at first. Once you're headed down the right path and you've made the necessary changes in your life, you can reintroduce your wants one at a time. Here's the cool part though, Ryan. You'll likely realize that you want far fewer of your old wants because many of them were pacifiers. And that was cool for me. Like, if you got rid of all the wants and you realize, oh, some of these are actually likes.
Right.
And they weren't adding the same value I thought they were. And month 3, I reduced my needs by 50%. Now that sounds crazy for some people. Now, do I say you have to do that? No, you don't have to do anything. You can keep all your stuff.
But it's possible.
It is certainly possible. I moved to a smaller apartment. I reduced my electricity, stopped using air conditioning as much. I mean, there were things that I did that I reduced my needs because you still need these things, but you can downsize in a way that is appropriate for you. And it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but to me, that really helped me better appreciate the things I have. And then once I got out of debt, I was able to start bringing those wants back into my life. And man, I got so much more value from them because I was doing so deliberately. And so I think she's in a really good spot right now where she gets to determine what does she really need, what does she truly want, and what does she think she just likes. And then, with the other thing that I would talk about is the packing party. She's doing a packing party now, right? So for those who aren't familiar, you can check out Ryan's packing party. He boxed up everything he owns and unpacked only the items he needed over 21 days. You can see that at the minimalists.com/packing. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And you're forcing yourself into your own little packing party. Let's have some fun with it and unpack only the items you need once you've moved across the country.
I've had mentoring clients do this where they'll send me their likes, wants, needs. Mm-hmm. And just to speak to you, it is totally possible to get rid of some of the needs because I've had mentoring clients who have Wi-Fi, but then they have like 2 additional like internet data cards on their cell phone account under their needs list.
Oh, wow.
And they may feel like they need it. Like, I mean, that's...
We trick ourselves a lot to think we need things that we don't.
And, you know, talking them through it, it's like, oh, wow, like you have Wi-Fi at home. There's also Wi-Fi around. If you absolutely need to stop and get Wi-Fi somewhere, you could probably stop at a Starbucks or even a library or a bookstore or something who has free Wi-Fi. You don't have to have this data card, this 40 or 45. I don't know what the price is now. This was a few years ago of the example that I'm thinking. But yeah, just to your point of, even though we have this list of needs, we could certainly even trim that down. I'll tell you, Deaton, you could do what I did when I moved out to Montana, which is I'd put everything I could in my car. And there were still a few items I had left over, like a bed and some boxes of like random kitchen utensils / just kitchen items, like boxes, like half boxes of cereal and just stuff that like I thought, man, I don't plan on going out to Montana for 4 years, which is
our plan
what
was
we're
to be
coming
out
up
here
on
for
now.
4 months.
Yeah, we were going
to potentially move. We weren't certain, but we were potentially going to move back to Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to need a bed when I come back to Dayton, Ohio. And probably, this stuff isn't going to expire, these cans of food, whatever. So I got a hold of my grandma, and I was able to like store stuff in her garage temporarily. I came back 6 months later, realizing like, oh, wow, I'm going to stay in Montana for a while. And I went to my grandma's garage, and I literally like sold everything in that garage. And there was some like really, really like important sentimental stuff there. Like I had this chair that it was the first big purchase that I made. I was 18 years old. I was working for my dad. I got, had saved up a few $100, and there was this like antique chair that I really, really, really loved. And it was $300, and I'm like, God, like I've never spent this kind of money, but it's a really nice chair, and I'll have it forever. And I had it for a long time. I had it for, God, I mean, when we moved out to Montana, I mean, that was 4 years ago, so I'd have been 31 years old. I had that chair since I was 18. So, what is that, 13 years that I had that chair. It meant a lot to me. And actually, people who would come over to my house, my long-term friends, every time they saw that chair, they would always be like, man, that is such a beautiful chair there, man. That was a really good purchase. And I remember getting rid of that chair for $40. And it was one of the most like frightening things, but also one of the most freeing things. And I would say it was more freeing than it was frightening. Yeah. Because just putting that chair back in my car to drive back to Montana wouldn't have been plausible. I mean, maybe I could have squeezed it in there, but it would have been ridiculous, and there wasn't room for it in our new place. So you could do what I did. And store some stuff at your grandma's, or worse, get a storage unit and spend a price each month keeping that stuff stored, and then when you get home, regret it later. I would not. I would not recommend doing what I did. Even me being the minimalist, this was the approach I took, and it was the wrong approach. Yeah.
Well, you know what though, I think it may have been the right. If you were. Because we weren't certain whether or not we were going to move back. Now, Deaton's probably going to be gone for 4 years.
Yeah, it was wrong. It was the wrong approach. Hindsight.
Right. Yeah. Right. But you just said something to me that was really profound. Like you said, it was frightening and freeing at the same time. So maybe freedom is frightening.
Yeah.
And I think to many of us, maybe that we are scared of freeing ourselves of these obligations or clutter or this discontent. And the weird thing about that is, if you look at someone's physiology, and you can also look at neural imaging scans, and something that's terrifying appears the same way physiologically and neurologically as something that's exciting. So instead of freedom being frightening, maybe freedom is exciting.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's a good point, man, because when I got rid of that chair, and I was like, wow, it was the hardest sentimental item I've ever had to get rid of. I mean, honestly. And I just remember, the guy hauling it away, and he was the happiest dude. He was like, man, he's like, my wife is going to love this chair. I mean, he was like really going to get a lot of way more value than what I was going to get out of it. And like that alone kind of helped me get through that feeling of letting go. But, she brought up her record collection. The question is like, I don't know how many records she has. Let's say she's got a box of records. Right. So she's going off to college for 4 years. Right. Those records are going to sit for 4 years. well, she could like loan those to someone at least to get some value out of them.
Or if she's going to use them, if she's really going to get joy from them, bring it out with you.
Absolutely.
They could be artwork. They can be. I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff. If you're going to use those records, great. If you're not going to use them though, then they're probably just in the way for you.
Yeah.
And so I'll just say this: congratulations, you're in the middle of the most exciting time of your life, and it can keep being the most exciting time. It doesn't mean this has to be some sort of peak or pinnacle in your life. You have the opportunity to keep that going. I hope you enjoyed that copy of Essential. It's the essay collection we're going to send to you. Sean, if you either send her the book version or we do have the audiobook version. It's out there on Audible now. If you have any download codes for that, we could give her the audiobook version. Maybe she can listen to it on that long drive down Highway 1. All right, our next question is from Ivy in Clifton, New Jersey.
Last summer, my mom was moving, and she just came over one day, and she brought about 3 bins filled with stuff from my childhood and also stuff that were things that were important to her, like her wedding dress from her and my father's marriage, her honeymoon dress. It's like all of these important heirlooms that she felt she wanted to pass on to me, but she didn't have the space to hold on to it. But I feel so strange, like, getting rid of it because I don't want it, and she knows that I don't want it. I told her as she was dropping it off, but I feel wrong in, like, donating it or giving it away, or I don't know what to do. I almost feel like giving it back to her. I don't know. I need help.
Josh, it always cracks me up, man, when we have situations like this from listeners or readers where their parents have decided what should be important to them. Here's what should be important to you,
yes,
daughter or son. Here's all these things that I was holding on for you. Now take them, and they're your responsibility now. Well, what that does is it creates, exactly in Ivy's case here, this feeling of having to take care of these sentimental items.
Right.
I just want to throw an extreme example out there. What if her mom just dropped off a horde of puppies? Hey, I saw these puppies. I thought they'd really add value to your life. Here's all these puppies.
We've actually had that before. I don't know if you remember this. We had someone at one of our events say that it was a family member just left their dog there. I can't take care of this anymore, and left the dog with them.
Yeah, and it's not. So I don't want to sound like calloused here. Those puppies' lives are very important. I'm not saying that just send them off to the meat factory. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But certainly, if my mom just dropped a dog off at my house, I would go out of my way to find it a good home. But I certainly wouldn't just keep a dog and take care of it because someone bought it for me.
Yeah, and because that's exactly what you have to do. With a pet, we realize that we have to take care of it.
Certainly.
It's a necessity.
I would take care of it until I found it a good home.
Right, exactly. But we realize you can't just say, well, thanks for dropping that off. I'm going to put it in the closet. But realizing with stuff, we also have to take care of it too. Taking care of it means something different. It's not it's an inanimate object, but we still have to take care of the thing. The maintenance cost, the space cost, the time and attention, clearly there's a huge emotional cost here for Ivy. I mean, she's worried enough to call in, and she says, I need help.
Yeah.
And so Ryan, I think that she asked me, do I give it back to my mom? I think you give her a chance to reclaim it first. You don't just want to go donate this stuff. Give her a chance to get it back. You mentioned it's like an old wedding dress. I have no idea how you would get much value from that personally. But
what would you do, Josh, if I gave you my old wedding dress?
Oh man! So if you gave me a wedding dress, I would give you an opportunity to take it back immediately.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing between me and Ryan is we have a very candid relationship. And if he tried to give me something that I didn't want, I would just say, I don't want that. But it took a lot of time to build up that relationship, right? And so you're going to have to not repair this relationship, but move your relationship in a direction to where you can be open and you can be honest. Because, yes, your mother found value in these and she expects you to find value in those, but that is an unfair expectation of her.
Yeah.
But she doesn't realize that. No. So you don't want to go back to her and say, this is an unfair expectation.
What do you think you were doing, Mom?
Yeah, who do you think you are?
Don't do that.
No, you want to be supportive of her and say, I know that you get a lot of value from these things, but given my current circumstances, I don't. I do want to give you the opportunity to take these back if you think you'll find value from them. If not, I'll be happy to help you find a new home for many of these items. And don't just explain the what, though, right? Don't just explain here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of your stuff, or you have to take it back. That's the what, and that's important, but not nearly as important as the why. The why is, here's why I don't find value in these things, and here's what I do find value in. And part of that's our relationship and our communication and our willingness to talk to each other about things like this. Explain the why, and the what will become a whole lot easier for you.
Yeah, so you go to your mom and you say, Mom, I love you and I know you love me. And I know that you thought I would get a ton of value from these things, but these things are actually adding more stress to my life than they are value.
Your mom doesn't want that.
Right. And I know that you want me to be happy, and I know you want me to live as stress-free of a life as possible. And I know your heart was in the right place, but I'm going to have to remove some of these things from my home. Would you like me to bring them back to your home, or would you rather me find a nice place to give these to, or find them a better home than yours or my home?
Yeah, exactly. And last thing I would recommend here, so we go into, your mom may see this as a gift, right? She's giving you some sort of gift, because you don't have to wait till a holiday to give someone a gift. You're giving someone a thing. She may look at it as a sort of gift giving, or gift giving by proxy. And Ivy, I would encourage you to go back and maybe you can listen to this answer with your mother. I'm happy to be the bearer of good news here. But you can go back and listen to our gift giving episode in our podcast feed as well. I think you'll find immense value from that. And we also talk a lot about relationships, because this isn't necessarily a gift-giving matter or a material possession matter. This is an improving your relationship matter. And if you can improve the way you communicate with your mother, the long-term communication about stuff is going to become easier over time. Now, just like we talked about earlier, don't expect them in 30 minutes to transition to your way of thinking. It's taken your mother 40, 50, 60, 70 years, however old that person is, to transition to accumulate their current way of thinking, and pivoting slightly in your direction is going to take a little bit of time. Ryan and I wrote a book called Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life, and it talks about the 5 values that we have uncovered, the 5 higher order values. I'd love to send you a copy of that book, because one of those values is relationships. And we dive really deep into loving, caring, understanding, trusting, accepting, tolerating, respecting, and ultimately appreciating the other person, and finding ways to understand that person and the way they live, even though it's different from you. So Sean, if you can send Ivy a copy of that book, or if she wants the Audible version, that just came out as well. You can send her an Audible download code if we have any left. All right, y'all, we'd love to hear what you have to say. So if you have a comment about moving or boxing up stuff, or any of the questions that we covered today, including minimalism tips for how you handle moving, then leave us a voicemail, 406-219-7839. We'll air our favorite comments and tips on the next episode. And here's a tip for you. Write down your message before you call. It will help you articulate your point and increase your chance of being on the show.
Okay, let's move on to our hashtag Ask the Minimalists lightning round, where we answer questions from social media.
We are on Twitter and Instagram at The Minimalists, and Facebook.com/The Minimalists. During this lightning round, Ryan and I do our best to answer each question with just a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We'll also put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes, so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like.
Our first question is from Lisa. Where do you suggest looking for packing/moving boxes for free or relatively cheap? I don't want to spend a lot to move.
Well, I'm going to flip this one around a little bit, Ryan. My concise answer is, if you have less stuff, you'll need fewer boxes. So let's start thinking about it that way first, right?
That's good. That is really good.
Let's think about having fewer boxes.
So what you're saying is start planning ahead.
Yes.
By removing possessions, having fewer possessions, so you won't need as many boxes to move in the future.
Right. And then my non-tweetable answer is where I get used boxes is from usedcardboardboxes.com. I know that they have no affiliation with our show. This is not an advertisement, but I've gone there before, and I've gotten a handful of boxes, and they just recycle other people's boxes, and they'll mail them to you in a relatively environmentally friendly package. And it's just sort of tied up, and the UPS guy drops off some broken down boxes, and then you put them all together. And if you have less stuff, though, you'll need fewer boxes.
So I would say, Lisa, between your friends, family, and local grocery stores, you can find a lot of cardboard boxes for free. So you gotta really discern what is more valuable, your time or the $20 you're going to spend at usedcardboardboxes.com, who has already gone to their friends and family and local grocery stores and curated a bunch of used boxes for you.
Right.
That's up for you to decide. But if you're looking for free cardboard boxes, between those three resources, I bet you'll be able to find enough cardboard boxes to move your stuff.
Our friend Jessica also recommended, so Jessica helps out with some of our social media posts. She also has a great podcast called The Mind Palace. If you're looking for another minimalist podcast, her and Melissa have a really good podcast, The Mind Palace. But she recommended liquor stores. So there's really strong small boxes there. So if you don't have a lot of stuff that you have things you want to put in these small boxes, I guess she's moved quite a bit. She moved to Hawaii a year ago, LA 2 years ago, and she's in Chicago now. Her and her husband Matt. And so they've moved a lot, and I guess that's one of her pro tips. Find a liquor store who wants to give you some boxes.
All right, this question's from Josh. Wait a minute. Did you write in a question? What is a good rule for stuff that you may use in the future? If not needed in 6 months, throw away?
Well, let's see here. My short tweetable answer is distinguish between just for when and just in case items. Let go of just in case items with the 20/20 rule, and apply the 90/90 rule to just for when items. We'll put links to both of those rules in the show notes.
I would say it doesn't matter what rules you follow, as long as you're following rules that fit with your lifestyle. I think picking out the rules are probably the easy part.
Yeah.
It's sticking to the rules is what the hard part is.
Yeah.
So, maybe the 90/90 rule, I was thinking about this earlier today. With my snowboard, that's the only exception I think. Because if it's like July 1st, I'm not going to go boarding until December. Because of, we used to be able to, Montanans used to be able to snowboard in October, but now it's like December.
Right.
And then I'm not going to be, snowboarding in April. But yeah, so for me, maybe it's, it's 120.
Sure.
But that's to my point of, Josh and I, who have similar values and beliefs, we still have different rules for ourselves, and they are appropriate for our lives. So, Josh, choose whatever rules you want. The important part is that you act on those and stick to those rules. Don't choose the 6-month rule that you laid out here for yourself, Josh. Sounds like a great rule. Don't talk yourself into keeping stuff past that, because I know that when you were helping me with my packing party, we had to come up with a rule to stick to, because there were so many things that I wanted to hold on to just in case, or just for when.
Right.
Wink, wink. Even though really it was technically just in case.
Right.
So like the coffee mugs. I don't.
Yeah. Those are. So just for when are your snowboard? Like you're going to use it, even though it's 97 days away or whatever.
But if I'm looking at 40 coffee mugs and I'm like, I haven't used nearly this many coffee mugs in the last year, I'm probably not going to use them in the next year.
Right.
But I know eventually within 20 years I'm going to use. That's where you get into. That's where I would get into the temptation to hold on to things. I would make a rule and then maybe try and make an excuse to go outside of that rule. And thank God you were there to help me stick to it.
Well, that's an important point. Having someone to help point out the flaws in the rules we set up. And even when you read the 90/90 rule on our website, you'll see that it is adjustable. Right? It's like one of those mattresses that you can change the setting on. This rule is adjustable. For me, it tends to be a 30/30 rule. And because if I don't use something in a month and I'm not going to use it in the next month, I'm like, why do I need this? Again, some exceptions there. I have some just for when items. My coat.
Winter coat, that's important.
Yeah. And so that won't fall in 30/30, but most of my things actually fall in a 30/30 rule for me. And so find out what rule is right for you. Like Ryan said, it needs to fit your lifestyle.
All right, our next question is from Maddie. I'm currently in the process of moving. How do you decide what to sell, what to donate, and what to give away?
Man, so this one is easy for me. Moving is the perfect time to throw your own literal packing party. So you are forced to pack. You're packing up all your stuff anyway, unless you're just going to leave it all there for your landlord to deal with or something, which is not recommended. And so you have to box up all your stuff anyway. Now is the perfect time to embark on that packing party. And you can find that again at theminimalists.com/packing.
You know, deciding what to sell, which is part of Maddie's question, there's probably the hardest part. So here's what I say about when you are choosing to sell your possessions. When selling possessions, it's important to determine the value of your time versus the sunk cost of an item. And we've talked about this before, but you know, sometimes you've got a phone that you've paid $500 for, and you want to get maybe I can get $250 out of it. Well, you're never going to get $250 out of a phone that's 6 months older. Okay, there might be some exceptions to that rule, but for all intents and purposes, if you've got a phone that is a year or two old,
you're not going to make your money back on it.
No, there is a sunk cost you have to accept. So maybe you could get $50 out of it. Well, you've got to determine, is it worth your time to put it up on eBay or to find a way to get $50 for that? Because I'll tell you, I have spent hours and hours and hours selling stuff on Craigslist, just for someone to show up and give me $20 for something.
Sure.
And when I think about it, it's like, wow, I think I would have paid someone $20 to just come and take this item.
Yeah, and it also depends on your current financial situation too. I remember with me, when eBay became my best friend for a while when I was in debt. There are all kinds of people complaining about they don't have any money. Or
you had more time than money,
right?
So it was important to make sure to get that $20, that $50 here or there.
Yeah, I mean, you could. There are $5,000 to $15,000 worth of things you can sell in your home right now. You don't realize. Like, you have these extra pairs of shoes, all these extra clothes. People are going to buy this stuff from you. And for me, what my initial rule was, if I could get more than $20 for it, I would sell the item. If not, I would find a way to either donate it to someone I knew who would get value from it, or to a local thrift shop, or ultimately, is there a way to get rid of it without throwing it away? Is basically what I was trying to do. So I'd either sell, donate, recycle, or ultimately trash if that's what I had to do. But if I go through that process, there were very few things I actually had to throw away in a physical dump, because I found ways to get rid of them. So for me, it was more than $20. I was willing to sell it and really pay off my debt. Now that I don't have debt, it tends to be higher ticket items I'll try to sell. If it's over $100, I'll try to find a way to sell it.
This one's from Laurie. I am a sentimental person, so it's hard to get rid of old stuff. What's a good first step?
The first step in letting go is understanding that our memories aren't inside our things. Our memories are inside us.
Lori, start small. Give away one sentimental item and see how it feels. If you can't sleep at night, ask for it back.
You know, it's interesting, man. So since I first embraced minimalism about 7+ years ago, I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, hundreds of thousands of items. And there isn't a single item that I miss.
Yeah.
Not one thing where I'm like, I really wish I wouldn't have gotten rid of that.
Even my sentimental stuff. That chair, like talking about that earlier, did not evoke any negative emotion for me.
No.
If anything, I thought, I bet you that chair is sitting in that guy's living room right now, and him and his wife are really, really getting a lot of value out of that chair. But yeah, if I had that chair, I still don't have a space for it. I'd rather have that second couch than that chair, because the couch I use all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So Ryan is a minimalist with 2 couches. What a hypocrite. No, but I mean, that's the point. You use them all the time. You have those game nights and
people staying over. I mean, it's
yeah.
There's plenty. Those 2 couches get plenty of use. Mm-hmm. All right, our last question is from Finney. We moved countries and got rid of everything, including our furniture and kitchenware. How do we decide what's essential for our new place?
All right, here's my answer. Ask yourself, how do I want to live? Build your home and your stuff around that life.
Don't bring things into your home just because there's a space for it. Instead, ask, what is going to serve a purpose or bring you joy?
Okay, it's time for our added value portion of the show, where we each recommend something that has added value to our lives recently. I'm going to start with a podcast. I did an interview with a guy named Jordan Harbinger maybe a month or 2 ago. It wasn't the best interview I've done, but I really like his podcast in general. So it's called The Art of Charm. AOC is the name of the podcast. We'll put a link to that in the show notes, or you can find it on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. But I really enjoy the interviews that he does. He does these like long-form, in-depth interviews with people all over the spectrum of interest. I mean, a lot of interesting people. But I'll tell you, my favorite part of his podcast on Fridays, he does Fan Mail Fridays. So something similar to what we do. We answer questions. People call in. People write him, and he gives really great answers. He's really good at giving advice. And he always talks about it at the beginning of his Fan Mail Friday episodes. He'll say, now this is not the best place to start if you're new to AOC. You may want to dive into our longer form, deeper interviews. And I totally disagree with that sentiment. I love his Fan Mail Friday episodes. He does such a good job of answering people's questions. And so if you find value in our format, the way we do things, that may actually be a good place for you to start. He also does something called Minisode Mondays, Ryan. Minisode Mondays, where there are these short 3 to 5 minute clips, just something to get your week started off with some positive reinforcement or some actionable items that you can do for the week to make your week better. So Minisode Monday is another great way to get a little bite-sized nugget from The Art of Charm. And I did an interview with Jordan a few months back. If you want to hear me not at the top of my game, you can certainly listen to that episode. But I would encourage you to start with his Fan Mail Fridays or his Minisode Mondays. We'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I don't really have anything this week, man. Sean, you got anything? You got anything that's been adding value to your life lately? I'm putting him on the spot here. No. Well, thank God Josh has a lot of recommendations. He can make up for the lack of recommendations we have.
I have a whole list, but I will hold off on my list until
well, you can at least recommend one more thing since I didn't have something.
Nah, I'll move on. Let's move on to Right Here, Right Now. This is where we get to talk about what's going on in the lives of the minimalists. Just a few small things here. One is we'll be doing some tour stops soon and some speaking gigs. If you want to be the first to know about that, because they will probably sell out, you can just go to our email newsletter. Just go to theminimalists.com. Type in your email at the top there. We'll never, ever send you spam or junk or advertisements because all of those things suck.
Gross.
Yeah.
Did you see someone posted we had that, like Amazon's doing the Goodwill box thing, but I didn't realize there's so much like, there's some issues with Amazon that I won't go into right now, so I will preface it with this. Mm-hmm. But the reactions on the Facebook post were mixed. Uh-huh. But someone commented, they're like, "Oh, sigh, the minimalists are doing advertisements for Amazon now," and I'm thinking to myself, like, what? Like, no, we still think advertisements suck. Like,
yeah, we've never done an advertisement. Well, there's one exception. We will occasionally. I don't think of this as an advertisement, and so I could talk about it real quick. I actually heard Sam Harris talking about this recently because he doesn't do any advertisements on his podcast either. Like some of my favorite podcasts, Sam Harris, Rob Bell, who are two complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but neither one of them do advertisements. But most podcasts do, and I think some people can do it really well. The person who does it best to me is Joe Rogan.
Oh, hands down, man.
I mean, I Bex and I will turn on his advertisements or turn on his podcast. It starts with like 5 minutes of advertisements. Right. But man, he makes fun of his sponsor. Like he just doesn't give a damn. Like he's willing to. You
can tell he's just going through the motions.
Yeah, but he'll do so in such a fun way. I mean, so if you don't get offended by very heavy cursing, which I don't at all, then you could grab your partner or a friend and just sit down and listen to him reading off advertisements. It's pretty fun. I mean, he's a comedian, obviously, and it shows in his advertising. But Sam was talking about how on Facebook, occasionally, in order to communicate with the people who like your page, you have to do a promoted. Not tweet, what's it called? A promoted post, I guess.
Sure.
So we have several 100,000 people who follow us on Facebook. You should be able to communicate to them for free, but you can't always, and so you have to spend $10-$20 sometimes to get out a message that you really want to get out to have it reach more of your followers. Now, we're not advertising to people who don't want to follow us already, but we will occasionally spend $10 or $15 to get our message out to our core audience.
Who do want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do want to hear. And the same thing is true when we send out emails. We send out an email newsletter through a place like MailChimp. It costs money to do that. You're paying for the service, but we're never advertising on someone else's behalf, and we also don't have advertisements as well. I mean, and so that's because it doesn't align with our values. We're not saying that advertisements are inherently evil. I think most of them pretty much suck, and so that's why we don't do that. But we do want to keep you posted of any tour stops we're going to do. So if you want to add your email address to our list, you're welcome to do that at theminimalists.com. Do we have anything else that's going on right now, Ryan?
Nope. Finally, here are some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners.
This is Susanna calling from Vermont. I have an idea for Erica, the caller in episode 50 who owned a yarn shop and was concerned with adding to her customers' overaccumulation of yarn. Erica's shop could become a clearinghouse so customers could declutter their yarn stash and donate yarn to charity. A Google search of donating yarn brought up a lot of hits with information on how to and where to donate yarn. I think this could be a way to help Erica align her retail sales with her values.
Hello, my name is Matt Vanover. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. Basically, I have a comment. A lot like you guys, I worked in the cell phone industry pretty much my entire life. I made my way up the ranks, and I was a district manager for a few years, and then I was asked to interview for a regional director position. And during the interview, the person which was our VP, and this was a reseller. I didn't actually work for the carrier, but a reseller of cell phones. They asked me to, interview for a regional director position, and during that interview, he made a comment about, hey, now you're going to have to be working, 80 plus hours a week. How do you feel about that? And for some reason, like, that just resonated with me. I don't know why, but I just panicked. I started looking at myself. I'm like, man, is this really what I want? And I knew it wasn't. And literally 2 weeks after the interview, I actually put in my resignation. I didn't even know if I got the position or not. It was a big surprise to everyone because I was doing really well in the company. And, I was pretty much a shooting star there. And I was even asked by the VP of the company to interview for that position. And, I thought, because I wasn't happy at the time, so I thought that maybe the stress of my job is what's making me so unhappy. And so when I left, I went to another company just to sell cell phones. That's it. Only sell cell phones. But I went there and I did that, and I wasn't happy again. I couldn't understand it. So, I was asked by that same company that I worked for originally to come back and, be another district manager somewhere in another part of the country. And I was like, well, maybe that's what it was. Maybe I do need this. So I go back to selling or being a district manager again. And again, I wasn't happy, but my entire identity was tied into being a district manager. I found so much pleasure in it. Like, when I went to the high school reunion, I felt like, hey, I'm the most successful person here. And I put so much of my identity into that. And, again, I couldn't find pleasure in it. Right. So I left yet again, and my job was happening in a matter of a year. I never quit a job in my life, and so I'm quitting several times in a matter of a year, different places, and I go back to selling cell phones for another carrier. And, yet again, I couldn't really find happiness because I still put all my identity into, that corporate job and having tons of money and having a nice car and house and so on and so forth.
All right, y'all, that's it for this episode. If you have a question for the Minimalists, give us a call, 406-219-7839. And if you leave here with just one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it. Every little thing that you gotta have, every little thing that you gotta have, you gotta reach for, and you gotta grab. rainbow, I bet that you'll be fine without it. So tell your